Good evening, everyone. It's 5:30 and I call this meeting to order. If you'll please stand for the pledge and brief moments.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, thank you, everyone. So the first item is to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I probably should have made this a moment. We probably will executive session following our open session, so. To continue for a minute after that.
The exception of so moved.
Okay, we have a first. We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same. Unanimous. Next is a safety net and a cool moment, Brett.
So safety minute, I thought Sam pushed me to talk about the fact that October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So even though sometimes we talk about physical being safety, sometimes it's also security, and cybersecurity is included on that. We've actually made it a part of our safety meeting. So October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Like I said, a couple things to keep in mind, even in your personal lives when it comes to this. Recognize or report phishing attempts. You will, have access to emails that are linked into our servers. And therefore, if you see something that's out of the ordinary, there is a way to report it through Outlook. If not, just go ahead and send Sam a reminder. Use strong and unique passwords. You don't want to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Passwords, again, try to use as unique as you can. We do have access to something that we call Password Keeper now. And if any of you who have many passwords, like I know I do today, you guys can also use it too as a director. It's a software that you can put on. It's web-based and it collects all of them. The nice thing about it is why I'm bringing it up, is it'll actually create very unique passwords and it'll store them so you don't have to remember them. So that's one thing. Enable multi-factor authentication. So we did that about a year ago. So everything that needs to be secured is enabled with multi-factor. And then update software regularly. So Sam's continuously updating our software. The idea is that anytime a new threat is recognized through a bunch of different sources, they will create a patch. And it's software update. And so the worst thing you can do is never do software updates that have these patches, and then you're vulnerable. So we regularly do software patches and software updates on everything that we have as far as our software work. So just keep those things in mind. I heard a statistic that, you can never eliminate the risk of cybersecurity because people are the biggest threat, right? But if you do these 4 things, you can reduce your risk significantly, like almost 80-some%, I believe is the last number I heard. So if we can do these 4 things well, we can really reduce the cybersecurity risk of our organization. Cool moment. I don't know if we've done this one in the past, but we do it, twice a year essentially. So I think our next one's in December. So we just got through. We'll talk about the grants here in a little bit. But the committee did give away $14,800 in members' funds. That is done through the Roundup program. So the community trust met, and we got to hand out the big old checks. We have used the media outlets to basically talk about, what we're doing. Our program on Roundup has always been, we have a unique committee or a board that dictates those. It's kind of neat to see because everyone is different on how they want to distribute funds. And the other really neat thing is part of that committee's, they want to be very, very transparent. They want members to know that, hey, you're rounding up and your dollars are going to things that have value in the community. And so we've always felt like it's very important to make sure that we get out. And so this was just a Facebook post from that. So.
Okay, good. Good deal. And I know you said we'd be talking about that a little bit further.
Yep.
The next item on the agenda then is for your information. Want to have any questions related to any of those topics? Everyone good? I thought it would be good. Tuesday, does your head? Good, good. So, all right, so hearing no questions, we'll go to the next item. And we need to approve August board meeting minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same. So it passes. The next item, Crystal, you're up, are the RF meter. Crystal.
All right, so we did this presentation for you guys back in 2022. It actually was almost 2 years ago to the date when we pulled up the old presentation. So we have Larry K, I'm not gonna try to pronounce his last name, from Aclara. So he's gonna go through the presentation that he gave you guys 2 years ago. And then John Mars is from Brownstown, which is where we purchase a lot of our equipment, meters and things. So if we have any technical questions about the metering, we have these guys here to help assist me on the parts that I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and let Larry get started. And then after he gets through his presentation, then I'm going to go into a presentation of kind of like the impact of Decatur and the technologies that we have compared to what we could have. Go ahead.
My name is Larry Cradwell. And I do work for a company called Aclara. I'm happy to be here again, like every other September. But I just have a few slides here to talk about automated metering infrastructure, how you're reading meters today, and how we propose that you might read them in the future. And I'll take questions along the way at any time. Just a brief bit about the company that I work for. I work for a company called Aclara. We've been in this business for a long time. You'll see beginning in 1980. So long time in this marketplace, essentially selling communications equipment between smart meters and utilities. So two-way communications between meters and the utility office. I'm not going to go through all of these sort of acquisitions, but in 2006, you'll see we acquired a company called Hexagram. And that is the company that generated the technology that we're going to be talking about today. So the ability to read your utility meters over radio. So that product, 2006, almost 20 years of experience. It's obviously been changed and improved over time, but it's not something that's new or bleeding edge or anything like that. Reading meters with the radio solution. A couple other things in here. 2015, we acquired an electric meter line. So the electric meters that we use in our AMI solution are ones that we make and manufacture at our facility. We don't rely on anybody else for those meters. The last thing I'll say is in 2018, we were acquired by a company called Hubbell. Hubbell is a leader in supplying equipment to electric utility companies. Just trivia on Hubbell. When I was here 2 years ago, that revenue number was 4.2 billion. 2 years later, it's 5.4 billion.
I grabbed that little chart from the internet. If you had invested in Hubble a couple of years ago, you'd be doing pretty good right now. So it's a company of financial fortitude. We're happy to be a part of Hubble. We're a division of Hubble, and like I say, a $5 billion company behind the technology that we're providing. Company based in St. Louis. Hubble is based in Connecticut. So talk just a little bit about how you guys are reading your meters today. You read your meters today with a product that we call TWACS. And it is a method of communicating to meters via the power line, which is kind of magical. But it's something that we perfected 20 years ago, something that over 300 utilities are using today. Again, communications over the power line between the meter and your offices. How it happens is kind of magic. I wouldn't be able to explain it, but it's very good at what it does. But we've kind of sort of maxed out the capabilities or the bandwidth, if you will, of communicating over the power lines. So some of the things that you can do today using TWACS listed here is, you can obviously collect meter readings for billing. We collect meter readings on an interval, hourly intervals, so that you can show your customers on the Smart Hub application how much power they use during each hour. We have the ability to disconnect and reconnect meters, which supports your prepay applications. And we could do, you aren't doing today, but you could do some demand response. You control a customer's water heater, air conditioner in times of peak generation. But that, and that's a lot. I mean, that's what you can do with your AMI system today. If you were to move to a newer technology, an RF technology, you can do more. So we've got a picture here of a collector, a radio collector. It's on a pole in a utilities territory, one of their distribution poles. My man John was out in the field installing a bunch of these devices today at a different utility down the road. But that's essentially fundamentally the idea. We'll put collectors throughout the territory. Instead of meters communicating over the power line, they're going to send a radio signal to this collector and back to the office. The biggest benefit of that is there's more bandwidth than communicating over the power line. There's more bandwidth using radio than there is using the power line. So I have the bullets up here, the same bullets that I used before. You can do those things that you do today with TWACS. But then I have a plus here, some of the things that you can do with the new technology that you can't do today. And the first one I'll list is because there's more bandwidth, you can collect more data and you can collect it more frequently. I have a slide that sort of describes that. On the right-hand side of the system is what you can do today. And when we talk about a channel of data out of a utility meter, we're talking about measuring consumption over time in a channel of data, buckets of data that get returned to the utility. Today, you can do two of those. So you might do your consumption, customers' consumption usage, and you might do something else like maybe demand intervals. What is the highest point of the day where the customer used their peak demand? But with an RF system, you can record on a residence up to 8 channels. So maybe you want to record their voltage data for an interval. So you can record what the customer's voltage was all day long over 15-minute intervals. Customer has an issue with it later, you can go back and look at that type of data. You can record current, you can record, again, like I said, voltage, you can record lots of information that we wouldn't be able to return over the power line, but that we can return over the radio. When you go on Smart Hub today, you can see, your customer can see how much power they used every hour. With a newer technology, they could see how much power they used every 15 minutes if you wanted, so you can get a higher granular, more data more frequently, a higher granularity of data returned for your customers to see. I think I have another slide on more data more frequently. So what is this good for? got more data now. What are you going to use it for? The first 4, 5, 6 bullets here, the engineering kind of guys love this stuff, right? Because they've got a lot more data now. For we had mentioned you could profile a customer's voltage. You could profile a load at any customers that are on a particular transformer and make sure that your transformer is sized correctly, not undersized or oversized. You can aggregate meter readings over a period of time so that you could look at all of the customers on a feeder and then measure line loss. So how much did you put into the feeder? How much did the customers use? How much did you lose in between? So these types of analysis applications are called analytics. And like I say, the engineering guys, just they kind of love this stuff. The more data, the better for those guys. And they use it to improve the utility operation. So those first 2 bullets we call VVC and CVR. So volt var control, conservation voltage reduction is something that a lot of utilities have a look at these days. You're generating more power at the substation than you generally need, because you be able to support that house that's at the end of the feeder. You have to have a voltage that's high enough at that house. So you're definitely generating more power than you need in order to make sure that that guy at the end of the feeder gets the power he needs. But if you could measure the voltage at his house at the end of the feeder, then you could regulate the voltage at the substation and make sure that you're just sending as much as you need down the line. They call that conservation voltage reduction. So in a peak period of peak demand, you could turn on an application called CVR and it would reduce your demand and help mitigate that scenario. These are things that are enabled with the RF solution. The last 2 bullets are more for your customers. So you're already doing customer presentment with Smart Hub, but you have more data, more granularity that you could present to your customers with the new solution. The last one is with collecting data, more granularity and more data allows you the flexibility to create rates if you would like to, based on demand or based on the time of day. And that gets to be, a lot of utilities looking at that, but that gets to be kind of important as people sort of adopt high load devices, like maybe an EV, an electric vehicle. You would maybe want to encourage that customer to charge their car in the middle of the night where your power is cheap. But you can only do that if you're able to measure their power over a period of time, time-based data collection. The more data more frequently is one of the benefits. Next benefit I put out there is a pretty big one, is because your current system communicates over the power line, we can't tell you, the meter can't tell you when it's out of power. There's no power on the power line, so it can't do the communications. The meter knows it's out of power, but it can't communicate. Because you're using an RF solution that doesn't depend on the power line, each of the meters that's in the system is going to be capable of sending signals. It's going to raise its hand and tell you when it's out of power. So instead of waiting for your customers to call, your meters will be reporting within a few seconds that they're out of power, a few minutes, let's just say. And you will know every meter that's out of power. So right now, what happens is a couple of your customers call in and you have a solution in your system called an outage management solution, and it kind of, based on which customers have called in, it takes some guesses at who's on with power and who's out of power. But it's by inference and by calculation. With the new technology, each meter is going to tell you that it's out of power. It's going to raise its hand. It's going to say, I'm out of power. So you'll know exactly. When you go out and restore the power in that neighborhood, the little red dots will change to green. And so you will know that the power has been restored before your servicemen leave the area. Excuse me, a lot of times in a storm scenario, there may be what they call a nested outage, or maybe 2 devices on the distribution network that have failed, one in front of the other. And when you think you fixed the outage by fixing the primary piece of equipment, there may be another piece of equipment further down that feeder that has failed, but your service crew has already left thinking that they've fixed the problem. In this scenario, they can be certain that all of the customers have been restored before they leave the neighborhood. So, questions at any time? So two big benefits: more data, more frequently, more granularity, and you have positive notification of customers out of power. Those are, some pretty big things for your customers and for your ability to service them. But there's more. You get some alarms from the meters, so you would be alarmed if one of your customers went below a certain voltage threshold or went above a certain voltage threshold, call those sags or swells. You can get alarmed in a hot socket scenario, so you might be able to respond to a hot socket situation before it became an issue for your customer. Meter removal, always good to know if your customers are removing the meters. The reverse energy could be an interesting one, right? Somebody installed a solar panel, but they didn't bother to tell you. And now suddenly you're seeing energy flowing into the system as opposed to just flowing this way instead of that way. And so that'll let you know, hey, one of your customers has installed a solar panel, they didn't let you know, but now you know. And in that scenario, there's two-way communications over the radio device. You would or could just reconfigure that customer's meter to be a bidirectional meter, a solar meter, if you will. And so I'm going to presume that you have solar customers today and have a solar meter application today. You would go out and take the old meter out, put a new meter in when the customer installed their solar. In the future, you would just reconfigure the existing meter to be, instead of just a delivery only meter, what we call a bidirectional or a solar meter. We get alarms, more alarms out of the system more quickly. Meters can be equipped with a disconnect under the glass. You do some remote disconnects today. That's not something unique to the RF solution, but this is an opportunity for you to maybe move the remote disconnect from a subset of your population to all of the meters as you're going out to do the meter replacements. But you can use the AMI technology for solutions that are beyond just meter reading. So meter to cache is important. Want to get your meter readings in. But what you're doing is you're kind of installing a radio canopy over the territory. And that radio canopy can be used for other applications too, to sort of advance the service that you provide your customers to optimize your distribution network. First bullet on there is something we call distribution automation. That's control of distribution devices over the communications network that maybe today are controlled in the field. A recloser switch, a recloser is a device that opens up in certain situations. Sometimes that device will be programmed to close on itself. Sometimes you send a person out there to close it. But if you had two-way communications, you could determine when and why and how. But that's just one type of device that we would call a distribution automation device. One of the hot applications for distribution automation these days is called FLISR, or Fault Location Isolation and Restoration. And that's using a combination of recloser devices to open and close circuits so that when a portion of your circuit goes out of power, you can reroute the electricity from another direction and service as many of the customers as you can while you're trying to isolate and restore the actual fault. So that's a DA application that is enabled with the RF technology. And there are other devices that you can add to the solution that give you capabilities beyond just reading meters. One of them is, we've talked before about controlling customers' devices, and if they volunteer during peak periods, we call that load control or demand response. We have a gadget that you could put on your pole that will tell you if the pole is leaning, if the pole has been knocked over, if the pole is on fire. So if the pole is on fire, it might not be a big deal around here. It's a pretty big deal where people worry about wildfires. But if you had a high traffic area where there are issues, customers may be running into poles who get an alert that the pole has been tilted or has been knocked over. Developed in conjunction with a cooperative in Alabama who had the unfortunate scenario where a pole had fallen and the customer had touched it. It was a fatal event for their member. So they help us work on that device. That's just, again, another device that can be added to the network. We provide an electric vehicle charger that you could offer to your customers. It's a metered device, so you could tell exactly how much power the customer used to charge their vehicle. It actually would be bidirectional if you were wanting to borrow some of the customer's power from their electric vehicle, but it's also controllable. So that you could, if you wanted to lower the voltage or the load that you would allow the customer use to charge their vehicle at certain times of the day. Power is more expensive for you. You could throttle down the customer's charging during those periods. And there are many other applications that, this radio canopy can support. Make sense? Stop me at any time. So those are some of the advantages. I have a couple of slides that just sort of describe to you how it works.
We go back to I got a couple of things.
Maybe we can, let's see.
So is that an add-on or is that included in?
No, it's an add-on, right? It's an additional device that you can.
RF.
That's right here.
And then the outage information, is that like directly automatically loaded up to Smart Hub, like instant time? Members would be able to look, they're going to see what the system is reporting like we would.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to actually look.
Crystal, yes, I'm assuming.
So what our system, the AMI system is responsible for doing is sending you the outage. It lets you know it's out. So you have an outage management system that does those things that you're describing. So
Your first question, is it on the metering?
On the controlling the EV charging.
Controlling the charging, okay.
So the metering is already in the meter, but if we would like to control that at some time for time use rate or whatever, then that's an add-on. Yeah, something extra.
You said the meters are able to signal when they're out of power. Is there a battery backup on every single meter then, or how are they able to send a signal out?
got a slide for you. If you could wait a minute. That's okay. I could answer now, but there is a slide coming up and I'll explain it. It's not a battery, it's a super capacitor. Purpose of this slide is sort of the architecture of our solution. We talked about the power line. We also have a cellular solution, but we're talking over here about the Aclara RF system. But in the middle is a piece of software called Aclara One that you already own. That's already installed here. And it is the same piece of software that we use to read meters, whether it's read over the power line or whether it's read over the RF system. So the people in the office here, as you migrate from power line communicating meters to radio communicating meters, they'll not know the difference. They're going to see the same screens that they see every day. And so it is more of a seamless transition for you and for your employees and also for your billing system and billing provider. So one piece of software called Aclara One that manages the whole deal. We talked about the sort of radio canopy, and here's just a little graphic drawing of it. So meters and endpoints talk directly to collectors and talk directly to the utility from there. The collectors themselves, as we've got them proposed, I think are going to communicate over cellular networks, but as you implement some of the fiber that you're looking at doing, we would then just use that fiber connection in order to communicate between the collector back to the home office. But it's as simple as that. Endpoints talk to collectors and talk to the head end over some sort of backhaul. Cellular to start, but fiber eventually. Same thing in another picture. Endpoints on the right, a couple of points just to make there. We talked about this device that will tell you if the pole is fallen. You've got electric meters here, just so you know. Also water meters or gas meters. If you wanted to kind of cooperate with a local water utility in your territory, you could read their meters for them using the radio network that you have installed. You can't do that with the power line communicating system, but you can with the radio. So that's the little gadget in the upper left. The gadget right below it is the one that controls, water heaters, air conditioners. The one that's in the lower right is a representation of the charger. Just above the charger is a distribution automation edge gateway, a gateway device that can plug into the many different distribution devices and then communicate back over the network. Meters talk to collectors over some sort of backhaul to the head ends. Again, simple as. So here's your slide on outage and restoration. There's actually one more slide after, but we'll discuss it here. Each of the meters has a capacitor and a super capacitor. So it's not a battery. You don't have to worry about the battery dying. It's a super capacitor that will stay alive for 20 minutes after the power goes out. And then afterwards it recharges when the power comes back on. So batteries, no battery replacements, no worrying about batteries expiring. So what we do with this supercapacitor is we recognize that there's a power outage. It could be a legit outage or it could be a squirrel on the line, right? And so you have distribution devices on the line that are responsible for opening in a certain scenario to see if the thing will clear on its own or recloser event. That's called, if the problem clears on its own and everybody's happy and away we go, and we don't do anything except we note that there was a momentary outage, a blink or a momentary. But if it persists over a period of time that you tell us, and it's usually something around a minute, then we'll determine that it's a legit outage. Something's happened, power's out in this neighborhood, and then we start sending these outage messages back. And we stage them over a period of time so that they don't collide, so that you're certain to get every one of the outage messages. So that's those couple of bullets on the right-hand side, how we do outages and how we do restorations. Same thing on the other end. We make sure that the power is completely restored. So if it's flickering or on and off, we're not going to tell you it's back until we're sure it's back. And then we'll send that message. On the left-hand side of the screen, just so you know, we use a licensed radio spectrum, so you don't have to worry about anybody intruding on your radio spectrum. It's in the 450 to 470 megahertz range, which is chosen. I think that's going to be the next slide. It's chosen for its ability to penetrate through building materials and also foliage. This slide is a little confusing, but on the left-hand side is coefficient of transmission. And up there at the top where you see the little red circle, it's nearly 100% through, this is, I believe, 3 inches of brick, 3.5 inches of brick. And that's why we chose that frequency. If you look down lower on the chart, some of the higher frequencies have lower penetration. So we use 450, 470. It's a license that you own. If you get interference in that license, it's the interferer's responsibility to resolve, get out. And the FCC is the one that enforces that. So it's more secure to have your own frequency, and it's also keeps interferers out of the way. There's a whole nother slide that just describes how I mentioned how we do the outage messages. It's kind of important to make sure that those outage messages get through. There is bullets down here in the bottom that the collectors that are on the poles are also battery backed up. So if you have a widespread outage in your territory, the AMI network is actually going to continue operating. It's got a big battery in there. It's going to run for about 3 days. Give you 3 days to restore the system while the AMI solution is still operating. If for some reason you couldn't restore the solution within 3 days, the meter is still collecting the data. The data is still in the meter. So some dramatic thing happens and it's 5 days before some neighborhood comes back on power, we would just go back to that meter and collect the information that was missing. Does that make sense? Might be my last slide. Oh, that's what the collector looks like. It's about the size of a small carry-on. We'll put the antennas at the top of the poles. We had decided, I think there'd be roughly 60 of these throughout the territory in order to read all of your meters.
That creates on their own pole. You're not putting these on existing poles.
Could be on a distribution pole. It's going to be above the primary. Has to be a certain space above the primary, but it can be, and I think we probably did propose just to use your existing distribution poles, so you don't have to install a new pole.
And each meter is going to talk to multiple collectors too. That's built with redundancy. So it's not just relying on,
If one goes out, there's a backup for it.
Kind of the way your cell phone works today. You know, your cell phone talks to the tower with the highest signal, but it can see others as well. Similar to this, if one of these collectors were to have an issue, the meters would go to the next collector.
The FCC license, is that like, we have to pay an annual?
$500 to get it, and it renews in 10 years. So we get the license for you. But it's an easy process. Couple of pictures. I say John was out there today doing that. Oh, a couple of pictures of the meters. So commercial industrial meters, you guys use these meters today. You can see a long list of functionality, stuff that you can measure. Kilowatt hours and kVARs. We didn't really talk about reactive power, but some of your biggest users aren't perfect users of power. So you can measure what they call power factor and see who are your biggest offenders and who are not. You can use these meters as instrumentation profiling, power quality. So these are high function commercial industrial meters. I put that on the slide first so that when I transition to the residential meter, it's almost the same. So we've gotten to the point now where all the advanced functionality that used to be reserved for just some of your biggest customers are now available for residential customers as well. So all of those things that you see for measurement can happen at every customer's house.
that would be different than what you got today as far
It
as
is, yeah. So
being able to see the load profile piece of it.
third, yeah, this is a higher functioning meter than the one that you use today. And you can get disconnects for any one of those meters. You can also get disconnects for those 400 amp services, the class 320 customers that you have that still don't pay. And you can get a disconnect for a network meter. I did talk about, so it's a radio canopy over your territory. We're showing some devices that you could connect to it, voltage regulators, capacitor banks, recloser switches, those types of things. Think of it as a radio canopy over your territory. And it's channelized, so we use licensed frequency, but it's channelized so that you can have your AMI traffic in one lane, and you might have your distribution automation traffic in another lane, and so the two don't collide. So it's a pretty clever way of managing both types of applications over the same network. I bet you that's the last slide. Oh. We just showed some devices. It's just a pitch for the company that owns our company. They make all these kinds of devices that can be communicated with over the RF network. No, that's the last slide. All of it makes sense?
Can you go back and hit back on the demand piece where we could maybe reduce peak? Or would that process be automated, or would that be something that someone had to do here?
It's typically automated. It's typically an additional application. So there are a couple of things that a lot of utilities use. One of them is sort of demand response, these load control devices, control customers' air conditioner or water heater. So the customer volunteers for that service. That's usually a signal that's either sent from some sort of energy management solution, or it can be sent from the head end of the AMI solution that would go to that group of customers and enact that load control event. And we don't just but we don't just shut off the water heater. We cycle it on and off for a period of time so that the customer may or may not notice that they're actually under a load control event. There are other, we did talk about the charging device, so you could reduce the load that the charger is allowed during a peak event. But most people use their sort of demand response. I was going backwards and then stopped. What we were calling the load control devices. These load control devices communicate over the radio network to control the customer's air conditioner, water heater, pool pump, pool heater, if you live in.
You're essentially just leveraging our canopy to do that.
Yeah, but I think you had mentioned regulating voltages, like if we were oversupplying, that's where I was kind of.
That is what we were calling CVR. Where did I go past the slide already? No, I don't think I did.
Yeah.
So it's conservation voltage reduction.
But that would be an automated process, I assume, as well.
It is an automated process. It's not a function of the AMI solution. It's not a function of what we do. It's a function of a third piece of software that would send the signals to the AMI solution and say, hey, we're doing a voltage reduction event. And then what we do, so each meter now is a voltage sensor. So each meter that's at the end of a feeder, we would measure their instantaneous voltage, report that back to the other piece of software. And that piece of software would do the calculations and then control the regulators in the substation to reduce the voltage over that feeder.
But there's another component we would need to do that. Yeah.
Something that is enabled by the AMI solution. It's not a feature of the AMI system itself. It's they call it DERMS application, compute management.
The one thing you would have is the access to the data now. If you were doing anything manually, you'd be able to go in.
You might be able to look at the data and say, yes, this would be a good idea for us to buy this other component.
Exactly right.
Correct.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Any other questions on his slides specifically?
For any of them?
Used this before. All right, so a lot of my presentation is kind of just gonna follow what Larry just went over. But the current history of the AMI system that we have, it was installed as a power line carrier technology back in 2007. At that time, it was a 10 to 15 year useful life. We are at year almost 18 now, because we bought the equipment back at the end of 2006, but we started implementation in 2007. I know that because that's what the year I was hired. So all I did for a year was do meter exchanges on our systems. We currently have seven substations. We do have one location that is the Jennings metering point, but there is no actual equipment in that sub, so we don't really consider it a substation. 8,200 plus meters, just a little bit higher than that. And then today we have 1,927 disconnect meters, and some of them are separate collars, and then the others are all under glass, which is what all of the new meters are. So you can see the difference in those numbers. If we were to deploy the RF, almost all of those 8,000 meters would be disconnect. The equipment risk of our current system. So the biggest thing is our AMI transformers. So in those 7 substations, we actually have 2 substations that have 2 transformers in them because they have 2 buses in each one. So it has to have 2 in there. These transformers today, we do not have a backup for them. So They're about a year and a half to 2 years out. This has been on my risk mitigation with the staff for 2.5 years. Because I have a high concern that if one of these decides to go out tonight, we now have no backup for at least a year and a half to 2 years. So I was using Washington as an example because that substation has 2 back here. We lose it, we're gonna have to go out and hire meter readers because we are gonna have no data communication back for any of the meters that are off of that sub. And it's about 1,800 meters off of there. So in order to get a meter reading in a timely manner for all of those accounts, we have to hire about 8 meter readers for a very temporary time frame. So that is one of the very biggest things is we just don't have a backup, and these things are way outdated from what their expectant life was anyway. It's a big concern. The meter rejections is the next one. I know 2 years ago when we talked about this was not really a selling point because our meters at that point really weren't failing that bad. We have seen an increase in the rejections. I ran a report and we have done 351 meter exchanges in the last year and a half. So we are seeing that number start to creep up. Don and I were talking earlier, just because our meters maybe haven't completely died yet, some of them will start to slow down, and we do see that. And when we're doing our billing processes, we'll see a meter that, you know, it's consistently 25, 30 a day, and then it'll go to 20, and then it'll go down to 15. And you don't catch those right away because they're not a big difference from month to month until eventually you get a billing that comes out with 500 kilowatts and it should have been 2,000. And then as you start looking back, it finally hits enough of a difference that it pings and says, hey, wait a minute, this is more than 50% different than what it was last year. You probably should take a look at that. So some of these meters we don't catch right away, and then we end up having to go back and do estimates and adjustments after the fact. But they just don't, you're not going to see that over time. So meter rejections are something that's going up. We have not purchased bulk meters in the last 2 years. My thought process was I'm not going to come and ask you guys for $75,000 for a year in the budget for meters if we're going to move forward to a different technology in the future. Seemed kind of silly. Then we'd have this huge backload, and then we're trying to get rid of them. So we did 50 every year, but then this year we had a member come in with the apartment complex and we needed a lot of meters and we did not have them. So we were calling John saying, help, we need meters ASAP, because we didn't have enough in our inventory back here to get us through. We're waiting on another batch to come in now because we're down to like 20 meters in the back. So we've been doing some, sell us some used ones and get us some new ones on order for the last year. But it's not ideal of where we want to be. So the electronics is another piece of it. So inside of the subs, outside of the transformers, there are like My Rewards is what they call them. We've had to replace 2 of those in the last year, and they're $12,000 a pop. And then this substation back here has been blowing fuses for some reason. I think we finally got maybe that figured out, but we blew 4 fuses in one day. It's $150 a fuse. I mean, over time, that's not a huge chunk, but if it just keeps happening, you know, we're just spending money. And that just happens to be at this substation. The cost of the meters today, we're paying about $290 for a single phase meter and $800 for a 3-phase. The RF meters are $163. So we would save money per meter by moving to RF. And then the 3-phase meters were around like $400. So we'll save money even on the meter purchases. The meter lead time is around 6 months right now. That's kind of this. Is there any questions? I kind of want to go through the slides and then you guys ask me questions on the slides. That way you don't get lost in all of the numbers and the information. So do we have?
What's the difference between the AMI transformer and a regular transformer?
So the AMI transformers is how the power line carrier communicates. So it's going through the power line, going into the AMI transformer, and then it's going into our system. So by moving to RF, those transformers are gone. So we don't need them because we're going to be going to the collectors and there's no transformers required. So at that point, which we'll talk about a little bit later, we will be selling the transformers and then all of our meters that we have to recoup some of our costs for this project. That answer your question?
So it's not the same as a power transformer. Then it's called a transformer, but it's nothing like a power transformer.
Right, so it's got components on it, and what it's built to do is it's an actual transformer, but it's built to ingest a signal, so to speak, onto the power line that initiates communication with the meter, and it's a hexagram. It goes into the weeds, right? And into some sort of a hexagram. There's two different versions, right? It's like a hexagram and something else, and it brings that back and then converts it into an index reading. That's kind of the voodoo in the power line reading. But you have to have that transformer to ingest that into the line. And then there's a set of like current transformers, like CTs on the power line that kind of reads that wave when it comes back. That kind of makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
But you're right, this isn't one of the cans that you see up on a pole. This is.
Any other questions on this slide? All right, so the reasoning for the new technology, they covered a lot of it, but the meter data capabilities that we have, going down into the 15-minute interval data, engineering would love to have that granular data, because we actually had a situation a couple weeks ago where Duke needed to transfer load from one of their subs onto our lines. And it was a super hot day when that happened, and he wasn't sure if we could actually take that load or not and help them out. Because he sent me a big email after the fact and was like, if I would have had that 15-minute data, I really could have made a better educated guess than just saying, I think with it being 95 degrees outside, I think our lines will take it. And it did, thankfully, nothing happened. But had that not been accurate, we could have caused a big outage for our members by trying to help out somebody else. So he's huge on getting that data so that we can drill that down a little bit more. And then also helping members try to understand their bills. When they call in with high bill complaints, hourly is great, but if you can go down even further and you're drilling down into 15-minute, that just gives them more information to be able to figure out kind of where they had something go awry. Let's see. I don't really want to talk about too much to repeat it, but the demand readings for the 3 and 4 part rates. I know that is something that we've talked about for the cost of service study for next year, is looking at the opportunity to have single phase accounts that can have demand readings as well. Today, if we used our system, we have to purchase those meters separately, and they're around $900 a piece for those meters. Today, if we go to RF, they're built in. We can do that with no cost at the $163. So gives us that opportunity. EV, if we want to do an EV rate, a better time of use rate. The solar meters today, we have to go out and schedule to have somebody meet us on site to do that meter exchange. And then we test for the backfeed and confirm all their panels. We do charge the member the additional cost because they're more expensive than a regular meter. So we do pass that $91 on to that member, where these, it's just going into the system and reconfiguring it into a bidirectional. So that would eliminate the extra cost to the member. And we wouldn't have to go out and make a trip just to change the meter out. We could always go, and if we're going to be in that area, we could stop and test for the backfeed and make sure they've got 50 panels instead of making special arrangements to meet people on site. Some of the other technologies, the load control technology, voltage reduction and power quality, the alerting capabilities, the outages. Super excited about the outages because right now you're relying on somebody to call in. So if somebody's on vacation for a week and they don't have somebody checking their house and they have a transformer that goes out, they're the only one impacted. Nobody knows that. Now, after about day 3, it'll show up on our report that they have a 0 usage, but it takes that long for it to show up that there's something wrong. So in 3 days, somebody having no power, they've done lost all of their food, their freezers are gone. So we did have that happen at the lake one time. So having that real time is going to be huge, knowing that somebody is out. And then also when they're out there and they restore a line, like you mentioned, let's just say we've got 30 people on this line and we actually have two problems that we think we only have one problem. And we fix that issue. The guys pack up and they head home, but two people down here had another problem and they didn't come back on. Well, the guys think that they've restored that power, so they come back to the shop, they go home, and in a couple of hours, they call in and say, how long is this outage gonna be? Well, we didn't even know you had an outage still. So now we're calling the guys back in, they're driving all the way back out there, and now we're fixing these two people. Where on this one, it's going to show you before they even leave the area that they still have two people that are out of power, and we're not wasting several hours of time. I think that one is huge. Talked about everything being a built-in disconnect meter with it under the glass. That will save on all of our trips. Today, we don't, not that we send out a ton of disconnects out to the field, but this would eliminate any kind of interactions with the guys and our members. We would just be disconnecting everybody from the office. Should cover all my notes. One other thing I wanted to note on the meters is, I know Brian knows this because of our hometown board, but we have been talking about replacing the meters for our gas meters so that we would be able to have the capability to bring back that data so that we could eliminate our meter readers for the propane side. This would allow us to purchase a module at much cheaper than what a new meter would cost on the gas. And we would be able to bring that data back to us in our territory. Obviously, we serve gas meters in Bartholomew County. We wouldn't be able to get them because they're not in our electric territory, but it would still eliminate probably 400 to 500 of our 700, which would be a huge savings as well. And the opportunity for rural water. I know they've reached out to us about the NISC software. I don't know if they ever moved forward with it, but there's always the opportunity to maybe branch out and start collecting their data and getting some money back for that opportunity. John covered the multiple failure points. So there's actually 3. It will go out to 3 different collectors, where today is, if it doesn't get a reading, you don't have a reading for that day, and it's just going to come in as 0. This one will go out and it'll try to get a reading 3 different times for it. Any questions on that piece? All right, the member value. So Smart Hub. Today we've got 4,296 registered Smart Hub users. So over 50% of our members do have a registered access to Smart Hub. I couldn't figure out a way to tell, like, what did they look at? Are they reporting an outage? Were they just paying their bill? But that's over half of our membership that does have access to this. So if we don't have good meters and we don't have good readings, if they are wanting to go out there, I know our solar members are very good about this because they want to go in and see how much they generated. So they're very heavy users of that Smart Hub usage. Prepay, they're always on it because they're trying to figure out, why did my bill go from $3 to $7 today? What did I do yesterday that made that difference? We do have 111 active members that are on prepay now. Not having a good metering system causes havoc on prepaid members because they bill every single day. If we don't get a reading in, it's not billing them correctly. It's estimating their bill, and then the next time it gets a good read, it goes in and it's truing up. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's not. It just depends on what their average usage is over that time.
How frequently that happens?
Not too much, but we have had like 2 incidences this year. And one was a 15-day time frame, so that was not great. But because we had a piece of equipment fail, so we can't really do anything about that. So keeping those up and going so that we can keep prepaid up. One of my things was, our write-offs. Having the prepay is super beneficial for this co-op. Our write-offs were down $30,000. So whatever, 6 years ago when I took over, our write-offs were almost $40,000 a year, and it was a little over $5,000 this year. So it's a beneficial thing to have. So we want to make sure we keep that program up and running. Our disconnects for non-pay, we've done 364 disconnects for non-pay in 2024 to date. That's about half and half. When I did the numbers, it was like 189 prepay and the other ones were in the field. So far this year. And then just reiterating the outage management system, that is huge, to make sure that we can keep people on and limit that time off. We did go back and do some statistics on like our lost consumer hours prior to putting in our AMI system back in 2007, and it was around 3.29. And then in 2023, it was 2.19. And then in the 2018 ice storm, just because we were curious, if we didn't have meter reading and we couldn't predict and try to ping and see who was out, how long would it have taken for us to restore? That was a major storm for us. How long would it have taken? It took us around 8 hours. If we wouldn't have had that, we're estimating 10 and a half to 12 hours of lost consumer hours. So that's huge. All right, any questions on that side? Okay. So the resale value of our current equipment. So I don't know if you guys remember, but back 2 years ago when we talked about this, these transformers were around $1 million to get back. Now they are down to 460. Mainly because there's a lot of other people now that have got on the RF train and people are transitioning away from the power line carrier technology. So there's not that many out there that are, they're still out there, but there's not as
Really gonna want to buy any of this stuff.
There's a lot
So
of,
there's some of it, there's a market for some that's trying to patch through to make the transition, or it's in this scenario like this, if Crystal called tomorrow, my first steps is I'm calling surrounding, do you have a spare? Do you have one that's not reading? And they're size specific, right? So you have a certain KVA and then you have to be a certain impedance. So you have to go out and really drill and define it. There's definitely a market. Some people buy just to have a spare.
So when we be selling this equipment to you guys and then you would handle, how's that gonna, like, we're not, like, people aren't gonna be, hey, do you have a spare 3-phase today? Or is Chris gonna be taking phone calls for 3 years trying to peddle $48,000 meters? Facebook Marketplace. Just got the.
It's just a bulk resell back, is that what it is? Just a bulk to resell it back.
just what we would get out of.
But I mean, is that going to be to Brownstown?
So on transformers, we'll help market that. We have avenues, even outside of our region, somebody looking for a transformer. And then the meters, yes, we would.
Okay.
Procure them.
So what would be an estimated timeframe of being selling those things? It'll be 3 years, 5 years, don't know.
I know, sometimes like the last month, we've had a demand for 2, and I actually had to go searching for those, right? I found them out in Illinois, but it's kind of age of systems. It's,
Right.
Is it safe to say that the demand is continuing to decrease for these? I mean, it's, as to the point Crystal made, I mean, as people switch more to RF, the demand for this. So we're on the decline. We're not flat. We're certainly not increasing the demand.
I think, definitely you're seeing a transition, right? But I'm also seeing people that are content with what they've got, that they're paying for other algorithms or other ways of trying to do outage management, or they're saying it's the way it is. We're gonna have to maintain it. Because Twax is a robust system, right? I mean, it's been reliable. It's been a good system. So I think you're seeing a mix there. You're seeing a transition because obviously people want more data. You've got the EV chargers coming, you've got the solar installations, all that kind of aspect of prepay has been big in a lot of areas, and then dialing into more data. But as far as, demand on the transformers, I think they're going to be there.
You're fairly comfortable with these numbers then? I mean, these are not like, oh, we hope
No,
in 5 years we'll get.
I think they're, the meters, 100% realistic. The transformers, I think it's probably pretty close. I just, it's like anything, I can't say, yeah, within a year they'll be gone, but we would definitely help market them.
Crystal will give you a guarantee deal.
Sam's giving me one, so. As good as it's gonna be, we'll find out when.
That's really all this slide has, other than, interest rates are gonna continue to go up. Those numbers are probably gonna continue to come down, so at the end of the day, whatever our total number is gonna be, it's gonna keep changing. And then I would like to say too, on the cost of this entire system, Clara has held our price from 2022. They did not increase our price, which we're very grateful for. So if we were to, even though that number decreased, they didn't raise their pricing to what it is today. So that's a huge savings in itself. So I would say that, thank you for that. So really not anything on this. And then our risk mitigation, obviously my suggestion is that we move forward with the RF project. If we don't move forward, then we're going to need to purchase at least one, I think maybe two, just because if we lose one, then it's going to take 2 years to get another. We don't know when things are going to start going bad. But we would at least need to purchase 150 kVA and then 175, because that's what we have, the two different types. And that's around $300,000. And then we would need to purchase at least 4 pallets of meters, which is $134,000, to get our stock back up to where we typically were running prior to 2022.
How many meters on pallet?
120. That gets us around 400. And with a rejection rate of 351, that gets us a little bit of a cushion.
All those transformer sizes, kind of back to your question, those are common sizes. It's not like you're oddball sizing, So those are common KVA.
And there are over 300 utilities that use Twax, and the majority of them are happy and staying. Being market.
All right, is there any questions?
I just have two. So is RF expected life usage going to be 10 to 15 years like the prior system? If so, that takes us to 2040.
15 to 20.
So it's a little higher.
So just makes it a little bit longer. And then as far as accounting goes, what would the depreciated,
We did
Like-
over 15
Yeah, I did.
years. We did,
maybe depreciated over 15 years?
yeah.
Okay.
That's what most meters for what our US recommends. We figured it out.
Yeah, it's on my next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But it's okay. I just want to make
That
sure.
was my question.
I just want to get questions answered.
Those are my questions.
I want a motion. No.
Drum roll here. Right. That's the next.
So the next one is to ask for approval for 2.3 million. That is the total cost of all of the equipment and all of the deployment. So we would be contracting this out to a third party so that we could get it done faster than relying on our meter guys who already have a daytime job to try to get all of these done. Obviously, whatever we sell equipment wise would come off of that. So, but we got to put the system in place before we can sell it. So we can't say, oh yeah, let's just take that off. So we would be reimbursed for that difference. I did look to see with Matt, over 15 years at that cost, it's around $1.30 per month per member is what the impact would be to our membership. So. Yeah.
With the exchange out process, the way we do that too, not only on your meter staff, but on the office, there would be an additional workload because we provide that in a CSV format every day. And then there's checks and balances. There's all kinds of features you can get with that too. With them out doing the exchange as far as data. But then it comes into a file that's just an automatic upload, and then the system processes that change. So it will be, Crystal referenced in the beginning, she sat there for a year doing change. You wouldn't have that in your internal staff. It'd be automated. So.
What reason would you not want to go to the RF, the specific one? Do you have any reasons why?
My only con was obviously cost, like a lot of money, but at the end of
As
the
far as
day,
the itself?
if we do a full fiber network, why would we have radio signal? Why wouldn't we just transfer everything over the fiber?
So today there is not really a fiber meter, so to speak, right? So kind of like if you talk to different manufacturers, you know, it's always the same question of what's that last foot look like? What's that connection piece? So there is no real fiber metering system. But if you're going to fiber, what we can do is create your backhaul with it, right? So everywhere we've got a collector, instead of having cellular, we would basically change that card out or put one in that's a fail safe, right? Where it takes fiber or cellular to where once you get fiber to that area, we alleviate that cell charge, right? So you would still be able to utilize your fiber backbone, but today there's not a technology to be able to actually meter with fiber, if that makes sense.
I'm surprised there isn't.
Might there be later?
As I said, maybe in 20 years when we need to do this again. It'll be fine.
Yeah, they're not close to that. And then you start talking about, in my opinion, how do you secure that? What type of regulations are going to be around? How are you securing your members' data through your fiber lines? What requirements are going to be put on that? There's a long way to go before we get there. Maybe by the next time we get ready to do a project like this. I did want to say a couple of things. One, I wanted to thank Crystal. She has spent a ton of time on this. 2 years probably. She's probably got every answer. If you guys thinking of something, ask about it now. She has spent, we met a couple of weeks ago and she impressed me with all of the information she had around this. And I felt 100% comfortable once I got in. But if you step back and look at this, you know, it really comes down to, you know, we have two core things here. One is our cash register, right? How we bill. It's kind of important to us. Second is outage management. Those are our two core things. If we go back to paper maps, she mentioned what it does, you know, in a big storm like an ice storm, right? So cash register and your outage management system, that they're dying, right? And so you have an opportunity here to adopt technology at a really reduced price. And as we know, probably not going to have the opportunity again to do it. And the other thing I was thinking at the end of the day, you know, when we get into, and we are working on, you know, vision and strategy type things, we're talking about really about the member and adding value to the member. How do we do that moving forward? How do we get more value to the member? This is huge, right? I mean, you're talking everything that a member values out of their co-op can be impacted by this project and at a reduced price because of the things she talked about. So I think, you know, can you kick the can down the road, not at the same price, you know, and you have the advantage of the technology that's offered here. So that's my two thoughts, but I do want to thank Crystal because she has put a ton, and I would honestly, she's got the answers, and if she doesn't know from a technical standpoint, you got the technical experts here. But we are at the point where, you know, I don't know how long they're going to keep the pricing. You guys know the pricing for these things are going to go down as time goes over. Inflation's going to be there. Interest rates are kind of a little there right now. So we're at a point now, if we're going to do this, we got to get going.
Basically, the calculations just for my information of like hiring those meter readers for the 2-year time frame, and it was going to be $180,000 to hire 8 meter readers and then have the girls input because we'd have to manually input them like we do the CAS meters today. It's a lot of time. But just because I wanted to have all of the numbers of what this could impact if we had a catastrophic loss and this substation went down. Because this one back here makes me nervous, where all of our problems are coming from.
Time frame, Crystal, what are you looking, I mean,
Well, as soon as we get approval, then we can get the PO sent in, and then at that point, then they would start working on all of the metering types and, I mean, you want to go through all that?
Yeah, so basically, once we'd have a PO, we would turn that in, right, to Clara. From my perspective of it, I work with, you know, metering, engineering, billing, what all values we want to see, right? We're gonna build the meter program. We're gonna bring back the low profile the utility needs for the members. We turn all that in, and then it goes through probably 6 weeks of engineering internally. And then they have to create catalog numbers, then they have to get into a meter production schedule, right? And then that's when the meter lead times start. On the backside of that, we would turn this in. What happens is we get a project manager assigned. And then we go through, we start working with your billing software. They're setting up to where we have a project meeting every so often and start flowing through the process. So realistically, from start to finish, probably in that 1.5 year time frame.
But if we were to say,
When will we start, like deploying?
Start
6 months?
deploying meters. Probably 9 months, 8 months.
Yeah, there's probably, 5, 6 months of work. Like John mentioned, there's, we work with your CIS provider. There's work with integrations. There's work to make sure that the meters that we deliver are going to be exactly what you want for your members. I would say that John's about right. That we it would be sometime after 6 before 9 months that you'd be probably putting meters on people's houses.
Yeah.
So this was a current ask. This is not part of the 25 budget.
Correct. So that we could get started and get in
I
line.
just want that clarity.
So how much is upfront cost to 2.3? If it's over a 1.5 years, surely not all upfront.
No, so it gets billed as you get material, as milestones are complete, right? So there's some integration charges, that kind of thing. As those integrations are done, you get billed. And then what we would do is we would work with my deployment crew, right? And with Crystal and everybody that, hey, how fast do we want this meter change out to go? And then we would schedule our meters, right, to deliver. So it's not like, once you said, hey, yeah, send all 8,000 at once, we would do that. Then you get a bill for that. If we say, hey, we want to deploy over a year, then I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna send you, 800 a month or whatever that number comes out to. And then, so you would be billed for that as that happens. And then on our change outs, we would work through that in the scope of work of how we would do billing. Whether we would do, again, milestones or monthly billing, or how, what works best for the utility. Project billing, hey, okay, you're gonna pay for your meters and stuff as you get them, but the installation will bill you at the end of it for everything, or, that kind of deal.
This will all be capitalized. I mean, you're gonna have to come up with the cash, obviously, but it's good. It's gonna be capitalized. And Matt and I have a few ideas that we can talk about later as far as how the project can be funded.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I don't know if you want to discuss that in executive or however you want to do that, but obviously I'm going to turn to the numbers and say, okay, give me a realistic, what we're talking about.
I mean, we can speak about it. I think you either borrow it or you do some type of, holding capital. When you look at the capital credits that we're spending back right now, I would argue that this is a huge value to members, and that just like capital credits, sending capital credits back, this is a big value that we could send back now. And so I would suggest you talk about possibly holding back some of the use your capital credits, because we're not on a 30-year there anyway. You hold some of that back, you cash flow it through short term, hold some of that back year or two until you pay for it. That'd be an option
But you are also talking about a 15-year asset.
where you could borrow it long.
That kind of goes against what we've been.
Don't disagree. I'm just giving you some options. And Matt has,
warned me about the future thing. I knew that was coming.
I think you could do both, right? You could borrow long-term. Interest rates have gone down. Matt's going to have some information on that later. And then you could borrow some from the members through capital credits with usurer. We're getting that money from usurer. You could do both. You don't have money in margins to necessarily fund it on its own. It's got to come from somewhere.
Well, with a 15 to 20 lifespan, you really don't need to be.
Correct.
No, I feel like if the money is borrowed, it should match the useful life, just like we've been talking about.
So what is the benefit for the member? You said it was gonna cost them $1.30 for 15 years?
Yep.
You know, I'm hearing that it's gonna be easier for you guys to work and get more information, do whatever you do. What is the true benefit for the members?
So back on the,
That's a great question.
so the member value of it is gonna be, like the data is number one. So if people really do want to see their data, and the more younger people that come on, they love seeing the data. So being able to get that drilled down data, for them is huge. The outages. So if we have, honestly, to me, outages is probably even more important than Smart Hub, just because if I'm a member and my power goes out, you're gonna be responding to my house much faster, because you don't have to wait for me to call in and tell you that my power is out. So if your grain bin went out and you're only serviced by that transformer for that grain bin, and you don't know that you weren't doing anything, or your dryers, that to me is probably the biggest thing, because you don't know how many phone calls we take where somebody will call in and say, power's out. Well, when'd your power go out? Well, it went out at 9 o'clock this morning, but it's 3:40 and you're just now calling. The hell is it your power went out at 9 o'clock this morning? They think already that you're getting that technology and that you should have already been out there. They're not realize that we don't know until we have somebody else call. Now, if 2 people were served off that transformer and the neighbor called, then we would have known, because then it starts pinging. As soon as you get one call, it starts going down the line saying, okay, who else is out? And then as soon as it detects power, it stops. And then it'll say, okay, it's either a transformer outage or it's, a phase, feeder, line section, it just keeps going.
So on this billing, it was $1.30 a month. And then you just added $37 that is on there now, or you have it on?
So no, that's just, it'll be
It'll just be capitalized over the total of the project. That just was, if we were to do a cost of service study next year, we'll take that number into consideration and say, okay, we're gonna be borrowing or whatever, this amount of money. And over that 15-year time frame, this is what the impact would be to a member.
So on top of what she said from an outage macro level, if this system doesn't work right, we're working off paper maps, right? So we estimated in the ice storm, every member that had an outage saw an average of 8 hours out. We would suspect that would be at least 2 to 2.5 hours more during that storm if your system's down and you're doing it with paper. And so to me, that's probably the biggest issue, is the fact that now you're back into the Stone Age with paper maps trying to determine where outages are at. Actually, last night we were doing a server migration and we had an outage, and the guys, it was tough. I mean, they ended up, to get that restored took longer because we didn't have our system up.
Well, another one was like disconnect. So if somebody calls in and they want to have their power either disconnected or reconnected, like on their own, not for non-payment, but just on their own. If they don't have a disconnect caller today, we tell them it's going to be up to 3 days. So with this system, as soon as they would call in, we could turn them back on within 30 minutes. We just, however long it took us to process that service order, they're coming back on or going back off without truck rolls. So to them, that's a member advantage, because I can get my power.
Well, and to the point Brett made, what you've been saying, Crystal, I mean, you're never going to be able to capture and quantify what's that, how much additional revenue are you capturing because you're doing it so much more expeditiously?
We didn't even consider that.
There is, well, I don't know how you would ever calculate.
Yeah.
But it's an amount.
Yes.
And then like back to this slide here too, the alert monitoring, that's member value that we don't have today. The ability to be able, we keep talking about doing these, whether it's a time of use rate or it's a seasonal rate or it's a demand rate for single phase. We can't do that, today. That's why we haven't done it. With this, it's built in. All they got to do is configure it.
Okay, so you want 2.3 million, and he's saying he's just gonna bill you so much every month or something like that. Do you do a cash flow to that point, and then? Or you just gonna borrow the whole 2.3 million, then pull out a kitty to pay them?
I would ingest, it'll be a little bit of both, right? So we'll plan out with the statement of work, when they're gonna bill us and how they're gonna bill us. And then we'll plan out it's all gonna be cash flow dependent, right? So according to what we have, we'll have to basically plan that out. But in general, Carl, it's gonna be borrowed money, it has to be. There's not enough margin right now to capture what we're doing in plant and to do this. There just isn't. And so again, you could do that multiple different ways. We could do short term, we could do long term, we could do 15 years, we could borrow some of the money from not doing capital credits. You will have to chase the cash flow and plan it out. But in general, in all transparency here, this isn't like we have extra cash every month that we can just throw at this project and pay it off.
It would be like the government, just print more?
If you can find me a way to do that.
I mean, there would be the potential though for some cost savings for the system too.
Absolutely.
We could shave voltage.
The voltage reduction and then
Possibly
maybe even
shave.
some line loss
Yeah.
information. We could hone in on that because right now you're calculating that on a substation or a whole system.
Right.
So
And labor, just labor cost.
One thing too, you have avoided costs. I mean, our
Labor
system
costs are not going down.
taxed its useful
Yeah.
currently. So, I mean.
But I
we're
do-
gonna spend some money on stuff to replace it, whether the existing stuff is failing at a higher rate. I mean, everything I have seen and read is you figure about 15 years on that technology, and we're at what, 17, almost 18 now. So we've gotten our money's worth out of it.
So Crystal, are you looking for action tonight? Is that your
We are.
desire?
I think the longer we wait, the more risk we take on and the ability not to capture what we think we can capture. And I do think if we do move forward with this, Crystal, we put together a plan. I mean, this fits right into our vision as far as what adding member value and all these things that you said we can do with this. Let's put a plan together to do it too. Let's not just put this in place and, well, we said we can do all this stuff. Let's put a plan in place to actually do some of this stuff.
For me, the merits are pretty obvious. I mean, I don't think it's not a hard sell. The piece I have not difficulty with it, but I guess I need more information on is the financial piece. And I understand what you're
Any
saying.
guidance from you guys on how you want to do it. We can do it however you want.
Well, to that end, then I think for me, I'd like to have more discussion on that. I mean, you don't have to sell me on the concept of doing it, but I need to feel more comfortable with the financing. I just don't want to say, well, we're going to do it through margins.
Right.
We need to have those bumpers or those guardrails or whatever as a board, I believe, that says we're going to do it. And within these guidelines is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, no,
That's my
I think
perspective.
that's fair.
Going back to I don't know if it's a previous slide. I think you said the current value of the current meters is, there it is right there. So realistically, how much resale value do you see us getting?
I mean, I think we'll get all the meters.
You do?
Yeah,
So that would come off the 2.3 basically is what we're saying.
yeah. And then the transformers as well, like.
Right, you combine the two, so you're talking 500.
About $500,000.
Crystal, is the 2.3 net of that or you're asking for 2.3?
And then.
Okay, here's
It's gonna go down.
It's going to go down,
But that's not going to happen.
not right away, but over the course of time.
Yes.
if we get what we think out of these and you net it, it's about 1.8.
I just wanted to come to you with the total cost.
Right.
Then if, like, whatever we get back as the resale just makes the cost cheaper.
But
Exactly, and that's,
and just so I understand, those are not sitting out back that we can take and put out on the market right now.
Complete right now.
They're in place, they're being used. So those are definitely down the road as far as recouping whatever
Yeah.
potential costs.
So the faster we move or implemented, the faster we can sell.
508 is not an instant return, but neither is the 2.3 going out.
Correct.
Am I understanding that
Correct, yeah.
correct?
Long as the technology like this been around.
You say 2006?
Yeah,
That one slide thing.
we've been doing the radio stuff since 2008.
So this started off with water technology, right? So it's a good technology. I mean, and then the water, you're penetrating meter pits. That's kind of where that frequency came from.
So on that, is there any potential technology out there that's already starting to replace this technology?
Would say,
I mean, that's on the infant stages. You see anything on the horizon?
no, I mean, like, I see enhancements with this technology,
But not a
but
replacement?
not as far as, kind of like to your point, not as, everybody talks about fiber, but it's not there, So what I do see is when I go to these conferences and different technology meetings and sit through these seminars is, they're taking this RF technology and the stuff they're pulling back today. And then you go into some of their RF development plant and you see some of the algorithms and stuff that it's running in, in beta tests and all that. It's enhancing, right? It's enhancing the technology that's out there, phase detection and stuff like that, that's already capable in the meter. It's bringing it back. It's just enhancing off what's there.
What about 1.5 million over 15, and then the balance financed with the sale of this equipment and possibly margins or some capital credit movement over the next 2 years, since we're not gonna have to pay for it all.
Yep. We can do it however you want.
Jason, will you repeat that one more time, please?
1.5 million over the 15, since that's the useful life of the meters, and then the balance, which would be about 800, would come from the resale of the equipment, and then possibly a little wiggle room with some capital credit money from Hoosier.
So you would have to, the 1.5 you're saying, take long-term debt over 15 years possibly. And then you'll have to probably do a little short-term for this, right? Once we get there. Because she's right, you can't sell this stuff until
I understand that.
you could do some short-term with that, and then the balance with capital credits, we could use the Hoosier.
We'd have to take one special retirement from Hoosier to pay the balance.
Two.
One.
Two.
Only one.
It's not the only borrowing ask we're gonna have tonight though either, so.
True.
But I mean, if I was gonna say that, that's how I would propose to finance it. That's just one suggestion.
It's an option. And I don't know, is there a big difference between 15 and 30-year money right now?
I borrow everything I can on 30. It's the cheapest. 20 years more expensive than 30-year money right now. I mean, the price difference between 30-year and 15-year money is not. Inflation will make it back. Borrow as long as you can. The interest difference will be more than covered by the decrease in the value of your dollar over these last 15 years. Even with what the government tells you inflation is.
Not the true.
What about, so would this be financed through a construction work plan, or is this a separate project?
No, we would probably go through one of the lines that I'll let you answer.
I mean, we've got $10 million CFC was willing to loan us this based off our electrical business. I mean, we have a power line loan set up with them that part of it will be used for phase one of the fiber, but not 100% of it is going to be needed for phase one.
Are there prepayment penalties on a 30-year with them, for instance?
Yeah,
There's usually prepayment penalties on. I mean, you can get it without those, but it does increase the interest rate.
We would shop it though. I mean, we would come back with this is the best way to get the best rate.
I mean, as far as we still have $500,000 we can borrow under our US, but I mean, that's. We have spent enough money on plant that in general we can borrow, that we have funded through cash flow as well as.
Yeah, but that's not in place, right? You only have the $500,000 left on the.
I have $500,000 on the RUS and then I have 10 million the CFC.
But plant that you're talking about, that none of that's been applied for. That's not set up.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's all.
It's in the ground.
If you guys would approve today, we can borrow $10.5 million tonight. I can have it within a couple of days
From,
CFC as well as.
so you're borrowing the money from CFC against plant?
Yes,
Okay, that's the part I was missing.
yes. When we had to have our stuff set up for the initial NLC 4 grants, it was easiest for them. They could underwrite all the plant that we had done in the last 5 years that we had not, that we paid for cash. We more than covered what they were willing to, that and our equity position is good enough that they were willing to give us $10 million to do what this is called the electric business. Not even looking at the fiber business case study. Now, when we go back for the bead stuff, that's a different story, that they're gonna want to look at all our other stuff with fiber.
I would suggest that you figure out what you're willing to give up on capital credits, and then we borrow balance.
The 350,000, the one special retirement.
We could do two.
That's not what I'm proposing.
So even if you did the one and then you borrow the balance, and we'll figure out how to best shop that around and get the best price. And I
I'm
don't,
trying to figure out, I mean, without, it needs to be set though, because if there's a prepayment, let's say you borrow the whole 2 million, then you end up selling $500,000 worth of stuff, where's that money gonna go?
I'm suggesting you need to tell us what you want to borrow.
That's why I'm suggesting 1.5.
On a 15-year term.
That's it.
On a 15-year term.
Well, I would prefer that, but I understand what Matt's argument is, but I mean, I don't think that, I'm not gonna make that decision tonight without some more information from him. And I'm not saying it couldn't be an action between meetings saying, hey, we really need to get going on this. Here are our best options for the financing. We could take care of it next week, or
The length of this project is how long? 18 months?
About a year and a half, yeah. I mean, sooner if we could be faster, but a year and a half is kind of what we're planning.
but I'm with you. I don't think that I need to hear any more about the merits of the project. I'm comfortable with the
I think
project.
we're all.
I agree.
So
It's just the financing.
1.5, so that's gonna leave you about 800K. So you're saying we've got
50,
350 in here?
The other five.
and then you'll have 500,000 here.
Whatever.
So then you're still gonna have roughly 450 to come up with.
No,
That's right.
are you taking off the 508?
All of the equipment.
So then we would just pull, if we had to, we would pull short term until we got this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's realistic. It's realistic. That's doable. And we'll shop around the 1.5 and get back to you on this.
But my point is, if
15,
I just do 1.5, we're gonna be borrowing all kinds of other money too, potentially. Why do we need to separate this out? That's why I want to talk, have Matt discuss the numbers more later.
I mean, to a certain extent, if you're gonna borrow money, I always look at it as you borrow the cheapest money for as long as you possibly can. If you're gonna, it gives you the most options. Now, I understand if there's prepayment penalties, it reduces your options, but to your point, if we're gonna be borrowing money to do other things, I mean, we've already got enough plant in the ground to more than cover. And I get your point about matching.
Well, I'm just trying to not muddy the waters.
Yes.
But I'm just talking about the meter, but I understand what he's saying. Maybe that's for later in the meeting.
And I would say,
1.5 designated in the meters, not necessarily 1.5 loan. I
Yeah.
know, Brian.
I think what you could do is split this up into two pieces. So approve the project at the 2.5.
Of going forward with the project.
And then we'll bring you
Financing.
we'll bring you through 2-3 options. I think we got guidance of the 1.5 and then how to make up the rest of that. But I think, do we include that in others? Do we use the 500? Let Matt work that.
But I think what you wrote down is the starting point. Don't pitch.
That gives me enough guidance. That gives us enough.
Be creative.
boundaries.
See what you come up with creative.
Right, so I need a motion to proceed with the project. And the financing portion will come later. Making the motion, go first. A second. Neil. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, Reverend.
Yeah, I just don't want them out.
In your back.
I know, it's probably,
It's you.
it's me. I was wondering what that big thing was on my.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
See you.
Too.
Oh, do you know?
I know. I haven't tried that one.
Okay. So if you go down the road,
Oh, yeah.
Be a shot at tequila. Someone mentioned again.
How are you?
there's a road to
Thanks.
the left.
There might be a shot.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wait a minute, okay, thank you.
Oh,
Information.
They close at 10, so we
Head at the-
Right there
Or
by
right
here?
as you turn down. So if you turn down that road, and I think it's the first road on the left, you turn down there, I've only been by it one time. But if you, there's a random pole out in the middle of nowhere that's got this box, like a bigger box, to the ground. That's the Jennings metering.
Every time.
It's just a data collector. So, you know.
I just,
It's a half a casino.
Yeah,
at least 7-Eleven.
Hector's there, I'm confident he'll stay open for years.
I drive past
probably. So
somewhere.
like, you just turn down that road and it's
And why we need to muddy it with the credit share.
a big box, big gray box.
Okay, Selmer says the golf course is here and the airport is here.
Getting this is coming.
So it's I don't know where the golf course is.
I mean, the sweet.
Okay, well then it's right in there. I've only been by it one time.
It's just a pole with a big,
With a, with a
I got it.
gray box.
Good thing, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's gonna be top of the borrowing money.
Like,
No, what's another?
little.
Please,
I left one.
you and I can relate.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's right there.
thank you,
Yeah.
nice. to hear.
I'll be back. I'm just gonna walk them out.
I'm getting there.
Why can't look at
We still, that's the same way it is down here.
I think it's going, they're going down every
And I
dirt path, repeat that in lane. I mean, did you get to go to the
All right, so the next item on the agenda that we want to address is CEO update.
All right, so I wanted to go over a couple, just project updates and then open the floor for any questions from the active project list. So safety improvement plan, we set to have two things completed on that, which were safety audits and live line demos. Those are both complete. So the safety improvement plan is complete. Pole replacements. Pole replacements, three-phase, we're about 65% complete. As you guys know, we're having Kent, it's a new contractor for us, complete those. So they're about 65% complete on the three-phase. Single phase, we're all doing in-house. Those are about 80% complete. So on track to having those completed by the end of the year. Our construction work plan, there's like 6 projects on the construction work plan. We are 85% complete on that. And honestly, the 15%, we're sort of waiting on some member stuff in order to get those completed. So we are projecting to have all of our construction work plan projects and pole replacements completed by the end of the year. On our fiber project, so as you all saw, we did receive the NLC4 grant agreement. If I haven't sent that out, I think I did send it out to all you. It's a wonderful 15-page legal document I've read through many times. We are pretty much ready to sign that. Legal's reviewed it, our team's reviewed it. There's not a whole lot in there that's surprising, honestly. The one big thing that came out of that is good news, I think, is you're going to get 50 cents on the dollar for everything that you had in the plan to build to. And if you guys remember, the way that we built the plan is that we were going to serve every single member, whether they were served or unserved, right? So the nice thing is we're going to get 50 cents on the dollar, not to just the addresses that are either served or unserved, but to every address. The only caveat is the drops, which are roughly around 2,000. The drops for the ones that are already served, we would have to pay for. That's roughly going to be less than $500,000. So now instead of having a project that you're going to get 50 cents on the dollar for 560 addresses, it's roughly 1,600 addresses. So that was good news that came out of the agreement. Other than that, there's a lot of language pretty strong language in there that basically says if you are disqualified or you don't follow any of the rules, that you owe all the money back. We knew that was going to be in there. So we are pretty much ready to sign that. The one thing that we're working through is the JV agreement with SCI. There's a few straggler things that we got to get worked out there before we sign it and move forward. Entrust has begun design, so we did go ahead and authorize them to move forward. So they are working on the design. And then, as you know, pre-qualification for BEAD is due Friday. So we almost have everything uploaded. And so we'll be ready to go. So that's pre-qualification. That's not the actual application. But if you don't pre-qualify, you can't. So we will be applying as the applicant with SCI is essentially they're going to look like a contractor to us on this application through
The actual application.
They're saying it should come roughly in the next month. But we'll see. The timeframes they give you, it's as soon as possible.
Results to be early 25.
That's what they're saying still. They're still saying possibly end of year, but I think more realistic, we'll know Q1. So that's fiber stuff going on. RF meter you just heard about. Again, I do appreciate Crystal's work on that. She did 99% of the work on that. So thank you for that. Thank you to the board for giving us the ability to move forward with something that I think is very critical to our business. Any other questions from a project standpoint? I updated all the projects in the list as far as brief updates. If not, I'm going to move to metrics from last month. All right, so median temperature from last month, it was basically flat over our 5-year, darn near right on it. If you look at the CCD, we were above, so we were about 280 compared to 230 on our 5-year average, so we were a little over. But then if you look at the purchased energy, we were down about 1.6 when compared to our 5-year average. So 1.6, that's pretty close to our 5-year. And then demand was about 1% down. So even though it was, the temperature was pretty mild, and you kind of see that in our results here. Retail sales, this is to our budget. Not anything really, I think I would suggest is alarming. See what our residentials did. Commercial still seems to be strong. Industrial dropped again. We have a couple customers there that were off, and then transmission you can see did dip down a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the year does. This did eat into our overall. So we were about 1.95, and you knew this could happen pretty quickly, right? So we went from about 1.95 last year over budget and sales to 1.44. So depending on what the next couple months do, could eat the rest of that. When we moved to reliability, there were, again, no major storms in August. But if you look at the lost consumer hours, we're about 830 compared to a 5-year average of 1,300, so down. And then if you look at the number of outages, we're about 71 compared to 48. This has been a continued story all year long. And I don't know that we've completely pinpoint why, but our number of outages continue to stay flat to up, whereas our consumer hours are continuing to go down. Some of us believe this has to do with some of the right-of-way work that we've done. It means you're having smaller outages instead of larger storms. So when we have an outage, it's 1, 2, whereas a big storm, it would be thousands, right? That's been a consistent about the entire year. Line loss, I haven't put this in here all really for a while, so I thought I would show that. I think it's a pretty good story if you look at, and we look at line loss 2 ways, right? We look at it at just wholesale, and then we look at it minus IPT, because they can tell you different stories because of the amount of KWH that it's flowing through those. Don't worry about the blip. So I was going to try to average those out, and I thought, no, we're just going to leave it the same. What ended up happening there from a billing standpoint, it's where we ended up billing 2 extra days in 1 month and then 2 shy days in the next month. So that, according to your calculation, that screws up. That's what those 2 blips are on both the charts. But in general, if you look at it, it is still trending down a little bit. I attribute that to just the work that we do in the plant and keeping our tree trimming back. Crystal's famous 60-day AR past due. Again, you can see we've been trailing pretty low as far as to our 5-year average. So in really good shape. And I picked 60 just because it's in the middle of the 3 metrics that we have. And again, she would tell you that prepay is a big piece of this.
Right or Crystal maybe, on the 30-day AR, the numbers are relative and they're small, but there's a big increase in August for the month on 30-day AR. Do you have it? I mean, the numbers are small. It's probably
just one account that's
okay.
big. I know a couple of months ago, so there was a question like, why does this look so weird?
Flipped.
And it was that we had a bunch of people who had payment arrangements for large bills. And so there was like 6, when I dug into it, there were like 6 members who had bills that were like $750 to $1,000 and they couldn't pay them. So we had them on a long payment arrangement where it was like spread out over a couple of months. So your numbers, because once it hits that 30 and then it goes to the 60, then they paid it all and they got it taken care of. It took a little bit for those to.
The dollars are not significant, but in a graph form, it's just.
Yes. Yeah. And those typically are somebody that has a big balance and they just can't pay it. So we've put them on a payment arrangement to give them more time.
Yep, good question. Any questions on any of the other metrics or any of the projects that we're working on? this last month has really been around the JV agreement, getting the pre-qualifications and then working on the NLC. I did send out an email to let you all know we did fill the IT technician position. So I feel like Sam was very, very happy with the addition there. And I think first day is on the 7th, I believe. So we'll be transitioning to that. So any other operational type questions?
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, Matt, we'll go ahead and you can share with us.
All right, the balance sheet, as you can see, there are two things noted, the A and B. As a note there, the total current assets are lower to the drop in cash on hand, and the current liabilities are lower to the patronage payable being paid. Those are the two things that get above the 5%, the 250,000. The only other thing of any decent size is we did have a lot of plant last month where we got bills, so the plant did increase 154,000. So that's the very top. It doesn't rise to that level, but that's still a pretty good number. Any questions on the balance sheet? All right, as you can see on the income statement, we are running about $500,000 ahead on revenue year to date, and our power costs are running about $265 ahead. So our gross margins were about $286,000 ahead of budget for the year. Then our controllable expenses, they've come back down more in line as the right-of-way maintenance has caught back up. A lot more of that's been completed over the last few months. That will likely end the year under, I would say, from a controllable expense standpoint, because our labor and benefits are under for the year and due to the open positions, and I don't foresee that catching back up entirely. And then the last one is of course, the bad debt every month. That's going to be on there going forward.
And Matt, on that one, what's the total going to be? Because that's going to show up as conversion at the end of the year. Do we know what that total?
$300,000. Okay, it's $30,000 a month for 10 months.
So part of what's hitting our margin this year, we're going to contribute 300 of that to that. Am I right?
I believe so, yes. We started that in March, and we were going to do 10 months for every month. So any questions on the statement of operation? As I said earlier, cash for the month, cash is down $447 roughly. So we did not borrow in August, so cash being down, I'm pleased that at least we didn't have to borrow on the short-term money this month. We have our plant. As you can see, the numbers in general, there's not a lot of change there, other than some more distribution work plan projects. We got bills for stuff out by Westport and then some additional service, some of that hits service upgrades and some work plan projects. There's not a ton of change really. Anything in general plant stayed the same, but there's a few, every month there's some additional pole replacements. There's some additional miscellaneous. It's spread across all of them. So in general, there's not any one thing that sticks out really crazily there.
Is that going to catch up?
Yeah, I anticipate as the D&T had their billing person had a baby and they didn't send us any bills for 60 days.
It's good backup plan.
So there's $1.5 million there that you think probably will still get spent.
Yeah, I suspect that as, the pole replacements, they're coming right along. We haven't really gotten any bills from the new one yet. So that stuff will catch up, and as the guys finish more and more stuff. So
Your two big ones, which are pole replacements and distribution work plans, we are on track to complete what we used to come up with this dollar amount. The other ones,
Of this, those 6
Meters and transformers are probably gonna end under unless we get a big transformer in. I mean, or if we have a bunch of meters.
but it's gonna be close.
Yeah, it's gonna be close.
I think we'll come under, but
Some things are gonna be over, some things are gonna be under. It's just, it's how it'll be every year.
There's 4 months left of that, so $1.5 million over those 4 months, basically.
If you look at the slide in general, I think it's gonna be fairly close. Also, it's not on that, okay, it is on this slide there. One thing we did catch up on closing a bunch of work orders in the month of August, since we finally restaffed the engineering and staking department. They're getting up to speed, so 73 work orders got closed, so the backlog was pretty well cleared out. So that was nice. So that's why there's so many work orders that got closed this month. Yeah, several months where we were a one-man band. Any from Ed, questions?
Everybody good? Okay. Thanks, Matt. Let's go ahead and go into the next item under new business. Brett, I think you're going to talk about fiber spend for marketing.
yeah, Crystal's here to support this too. So I wasn't real sure how you guys wanted to handle this. So we know we're getting ready to spin up this fiber business. We have a marketing plan kind of ready to go. I don't want to give a ton of details because it's wait until we get to that point. But we know once we get to that point, which is coming up soon, we're going to need some money to do these types of things. I put on here, Matt and I had talked, and all this stuff is not going to hit the income statement. So it's going to be essentially in the balance sheet as like you would do for a startup, and then it'll be depreciated over. So it doesn't hit the income statement, but it is going to hit our cash flow. And therefore, I think it's appropriate to come to the board for approval on things that are coming up. So these are costs that we put together that we think are going to hit this year. Some of this, I think, as we get closer to budgeting timeframe, we'll probably hone in on what things may trickle over, and we'll make sure that we update the budget for 25 to what we think we're going to spend in 25. These are the things that we think we're going to do this year when it comes to the fiber business. And one thing I'll say, and if Crystal has anything to add to, the fiber business is a different business than we've ever been in. We are going to have to market this to get the take rates that we have to have. This isn't like they've got options in some areas, right? So we do believe it is ultra important to market this, to get our out there, and to make sure that we can get the take rates that we talked about getting. So Crystal and her team have spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how do we want to best market this? What's the cost going to look like when we do that? And so these are the costs that we came up with. And again, these are costs that are going to hit, we believe, this year. And again, it's not going to hit the income statement because we're throwing this on the balance sheet for now. But it will hit the fiber business, not the electric business. Not that that matters, but it will hit our cash flow for this year. So we can step through these, or if there's specific questions, what we're really looking for is a motion to approve that 27K to spend on marketing our fiber business. Like I said, I think it's ultra important just because we want to hit these take rates. And I think coming out of the gun, Jason and I talked today about some of the work that some of the other providers are doing. And so we're ready to go. Crystal and Abby have a lot of documentation already set. We got to get the JV done. We got to get this next level. Got to get to the point where we know everything is in place so that when we communicate it out, that we're not having to backtrack after the fact. Our worst nightmare would us be, this is what we're doing. Here's the addresses we're going to hit. here's the time frame we're going to do it in, and then all of a sudden we find out that there's some hiccup where we can't get to an agreement with SCI on. And so we want to get all those things. I got to call them, or that's going to really dictate a lot of this, but we're ready to go on the sidelines, but we know we're going to need money to do it. So I did put in here, and I don't know why I put it under fiber spend for marketing, but as you guys know, we did get a grant for $500,000 in ARPA funding. So I put in there where we're at on spending that, because our plan was to hopefully get that spent by the end of the year, and to use, and you can go and read through all the different things that we put in here. They had an ARPA meeting. We sent out this report last week. They had an ARPA meeting on Friday. I've not heard anything back, which I assume means good. We do not feel like that the way that we all wrote the ARPA grant, that marketing is appropriate for ARPA funding. That's not what they wrote it for. They really wrote it for grant fundings and things like that. So they've agreed labor and those types of things are fine, but I think the marketing piece is a far stretch. So we're not including that in there. That's why I ended up putting this in there. You can see what we've captured so far. We're still working on this list to get people to 500. Our plan is to do it by the end of the year, because if we don't do it by the end of the year, you can only go and get the 500. They won't piecemeal it to you. So if you don't get it spent by the end of the year, you have to have contracts wrote out for the rest of it. It's not like we lose it, but it requires a lot more work on our end. So we're hoping that we can get things paid for and get that all the way down so that in December, they're giving us one check. But back to the memo again, I don't know if there's any specific questions. Crystal's here to answer any. Her and Abby spent quite a bit of time trying to put together what we thought was the best way to market to our members and how much that roughly was going to cost.
I'm just kind of curious with the want and the need and demand we've heard about fiber for the last several years. Do we really need to spend money on 6,000 for sign-up gifts when we've heard the want and demand and the need is there? I'm all for communication. I feel like it's more of a communication, not marketing. And, you know, with the mailers and the fillers and the emails and the Facebooks, which probably get as much as the Greensburg Daily News does. I'm just, with the want and the demand we keep hearing about, do we really need to give them gifts?
In there in case we need to.
What would be the referral program? Because I know Watch is $50 per new.
Yeah, so like we talked about, like maybe like those echoes, or you know, a Fire Stick, or something like when we did Biosat years ago, we used to do a Kindle because that was the big thing back then.
I was just wondering about giving gifts when we've heard about the
Yeah,
want and the need.
that is not like we're not gonna go buy them right now, that we just wanted to have that in there, because Sam was like, well, you know, if we don't get the take rate, then we kind of gotta encourage people to jump on board, so then we might have to purchase smaller gifts to try.
That was my only
that.
question. Like, do we really need to buy gifts for people?
We are not planning on doing that right away. That just was, let's put some money in there in case we need it, but I'm super optimistic that we're just, so many people sign up that.
That was my only question when I saw that.
We just put it in there as a holder in case we have to, but I don't think we're gonna need it, but
Okay,
I think we're so many
I would
people.
agree with you. I think communication more than marketing is probably.
And a lot of like the materials with getting it on the radio and getting it in the newspapers is more for the name, which we're not ready to announce yet. Because we want people to understand that the name is us. And you are picking us because we are a local co-op, and you can walk in our door and you're gonna have member service reps helping you. You can call us and we're gonna answer the phone in Greensburg, Indiana, and some other state or some other countries. So that's a lot of the mailings and
That was just the gifts was my only
Yeah.
question.
that's just if you get nobody, and you gotta start encouraging.
The misinformation train is running rampant in my neighborhood. So I am all on board with some communication, because some of the providers are telling our members that are calling them that we're already doing it, that those are our lines that they're boring, and they're not.
So Brett had came and said, I think we need to do this big communication. And I'm like, I mean, I'm okay with doing that, but I'm like, what if that was like, what was that, a week and a half ago? And we got the email that said, 3 to 4 weeks, we're gonna have this agreement from the NLC. Like, but what if it comes next week? And then we've communicated to everybody, like, this is where we are in the project, and then a week later, we've got
Right.
a agreement signed, and then we can say, guess what, we got a fiber company. So ironically, the next week, that letter comes, so then it's like, hey, now we have to wait for it to go through legal, which we're done with now. So now as soon as we can get this joint venture agreement wrapped up, which hopefully will be very soon. We've kind of given them a deadline of, I think, next Friday, 4th. We have a plan to launch and roll out the company, and it'll be a bill stuffer, it'll be email blast, it'll be on Facebook, it's gonna be, the media will be here. I mean, it's gonna be a whole,
I don't really care what the plan is, as long as there is a robust plan, is implemented immediately as soon as you know.
yeah, I just don't want to sense that mountain and like literally a week later, we sense that.
I agree.
Oh, now we're moving forward, because then I feel like we're gonna look kind of silly, so we just kind of put the brakes on that. We had it ready to go, but then
It's like,
came.
you haven't been,
I mean, I got a sign at one of my poles at the end of my house.
but you haven't been on my side of 421 lately.
Oh, I got points all around. And to that point, I need a high level timeline of how this all falls into place. But when this money's spent, when our applications go in, when we get the bead, are we going to supply, because Brett and I talked last month about like my area. Are we going to, depending on the decisions on the grant applications, it's going to determine which areas we choose, correct?
Yep.
Is all of this rolled out ahead of time? With
Yeah,
the
so-
caveat that if we get funding for your grant area,
Yes.
elaborate on it.
So what we've done is we've created special filters inside of NISC to where everybody who we were awarded grants to, so the 588 addresses that we got awarded, they now have a switch on their account that says that they were part of the NLC grant. So when we communicate to them, once we are ready to announce the business, those people will be pulled and they will get a letter that says, congratulations, your address was awarded for our fiber business. Log in here, sign up for service. So they will get that letter. Anybody who did not get awarded money, your area, all the other, they will get a separate letter that just talks about, we applied for money, we were not awarded. We will be applying for the BEAD grant as soon as it opens. And then we'll be in communication with you once we know what addresses were awarded. So there'll be two steps. That way we're not communicating to everybody and all these people are calling in saying, can I get fiber? Well, no, sorry, you weren't part of it. We didn't want to communicate the same message to everyone.
But our intent is to serve 100% of our customers.
And so we will, Dale Dash, to answer your question directly about the schedule. So we are in design right now. So Entrusted's already kicked off the design. This is for the area that was awarded for the NLC. So we're going to sign this NLC. We're going to get the JV done. That kicks off like, okay, we're good to go. Entrust is working with Sam right now to put together what that schedule looks like because they've already started the design work. It's going to go way quicker than any of us are thinking. And that's why we're saying we're going to need some of this money. As soon as we start building them, it's going to go up quick. This is all stuff that's going to be strung along our poles and it goes, it's not like boring. This is going to go up quick.
Well, and to that point, because Jason and I were talking, we talked last month, there's a lot of activity down around my area, a lot of boring, a lot of. And there's been questions and I keep saying, be patient, it's a virtue.
And for you, it's more patience than like Jason's area because we still have to win grants in your area. So.
And this advertisement, will any of it reveal price structure?
Yes.
Yes, that's all in the business case.
Only once we're awarded for an area, correct, I presume?
Yes, yeah, because we're not going to communicate like that you get money. We got money for your area and we're coming to you until we get money and we're coming to you.
And the way we're setting the JV agreement up is it actually addresses that we won't be serving because it's already served by SCI or Southeastern or a grant that SCI is working on, which is very few addresses. The rest of it, years. Yeah.
It's my front yard.
Yeah, there was like two little spots and you were one of them. So what I'm hearing is take 6 off of this. I'd like a formal motion, yeah.
And this is just enough for this area that we've gotten, or you'll need more if we get
Well,
more.
this is going to be marketing for all pieces, so it would include the letters that would go to the non-awarded, and it would go to the awarded, and then it will be for just basically marketing the name, the fiber business.
So both.
You have yard signs too, so I mean, that's enough to cover both areas or just that area that's been awarded right now?
Area that we've been awarded.
Okay, so we will need more money later. Yeah,
2025, when we come in for the budget at the end of the year, we will have a whole fiber budget.
okay.
And then we will be asking for marketing dollars specific for the rest. Because hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe by then we would know.
Yeah.
But we'll put money in there. And like the front yard sign is gonna be one thing. We just didn't get the quotes back. We've had 2 companies come in and look to give us pricing for a yard sign. But the way Abby and I look at that, you know, that's an REMC, that's gonna be the fiber business, and that's a hometown sign. So that cost needs to be split. You know, hometown needs to pick up some of that cost because their name is on our sign, REMC. So it's not just gonna be the fiber company needs to pay for that sign because it's new. It would be split between all 3 entities.
How many grant applications do we have?
So there was
Okay, there's 6 total.
6 total, 1 got approved, but our B grant would be 1. It'll be broke up into consensus blocks.
It's one application.
Correct. Now they can award and not award by census.
Segments within that.
We'll make sure that the yard signs are 2-sided too.
Yeah,
Make sure.
we can talk about that.
Like, everybody, else. The yard signs, I just can't see the yard sign out there's gonna make a difference.
I mean,
And then the gifts.
Yeah. Southeastern has had great success with their yard signs.
Their yard sign drives.
That's what-
I'm not gonna argue about yard signs, because once your neighbor sees it,
Yes, they're calling it.
They are very, very impactful.
Yep.
Gifts, get it.
Yeah.
If you go down in the SCI's territory,
Everywhere.
it's
They're everywhere.
there's 2 and 3 signs in 1 yard. It's like they're everywhere. And they have where they've shown where they've actually targeted with yard signs, they're getting a better
Great.
adoption take rate. And we do, by the way, we do have I haven't got it on your calendar yet, but we do have a date next week that we are meeting with Southeastern, just Southeastern, and we're doing a lessons learned. As we kick this off, they have some good information because they've been through this, so, be doing that.
Yeah, so I'll ask for a motion to support this. Is the board okay with asking for the 6 or allowing the 6 extra? Not allowing it?
make a motion for the 21.
Yep.
I'll make a motion for the 21.
Okay.
Second.
For the first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Say, so that's unanimous. All right, are you a little bit more about the
Yeah.
application certificate?
Okay, so as a part of the pre-qualification for B, which is due Friday, you have to do these, what they call certifications. So essentially what it is we send this letter to your attorney writes a opinion letter. The opinion letter goes as part of the pre-qualifications. Part of it says that we have no past violations or current court proceedings. And so if you read down this thing, it asks me that the board also needs to be aware. So what I did for the employees is we sent out an all email and the managers talked to the people about if you are aware of the current court proceedings or any past labor law issues within the last 3 years that we are not aware of, please let us know. Here's the due date. I know this is a formality, but if you guys are aware of any current court cases, please say those now. Otherwise, I'm going to sign this document and make this part of. Okay. I don't need a formal agree. I just need consensus.
Right. No one's aware of anything, right? Good, okay. Good, yeah, I know you said earlier in the meeting to talk a little bit more about the community trust awards, so.
Yep, so as you can see, the board's opinion was they wanted to spread the money out over the applicants. And so you can read what the purchase was, what it was granted for, the name of the organization, and the dollar amount. But if you read, it's 14.8 is what they ended up. I don't think, Crystal, do you remember, was there any that they didn't fund? I think they funded everything.
Everyone that requested.
Correct. That's it.
Anybody have any questions on that? All right, next item then is, we need to, like the IEC director, and the voting delegate, and the meeting dates are on 9th and 10th, and I think, it's the first day, it's the 9th, is when, the delegate would need to be there. Currently, the IEC director, willing to continue in that capacity. But we do need a motion. To support it. Or somebody else.
I hear the motion. Yes.
Well, you made the motion?
Made the motion that Steve be a nominee for the IEC director.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Should we close nominations or is there anybody else? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Say thank you. And now we need a delegate, so somebody that's going to be present on that day. We'll also have an alternate assigned as well. I think, Steve, you were the delegate last year, if I'm not mistaken. Ryan, the year before.
I think it's Dale's turn.
Next year. So. Do I need to know?
Be the alternate, yeah.
You're going now. So. Somebody want to make a motion for the delegate and the alternates? You want to make a motion?
The alternate or the delegate?
Both. Make it in one motion.
The same. I
Delegate.
make a motion for Steve Nobby to be the delegate and Brian Scheidler to be the alternate.
Okay. First, second it. So we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Those the same. All right. Thanks, Steve. Continuing onward, I think there were some emails that Brad sent earlier in the month regarding our December meeting for not only the budget, but because Christmas would be our December meeting date, we thought we probably would like to change that. So, what's that? I don't think so. In addition, it used to be, of course, when we had our November meeting date, we typically move that because of Thanksgiving. So there is a recommendation that we consider moving that to Tuesday, November the 26th, if everybody's good with that day. I'm sorry.
Could you repeat the date? Remember the what?
Tuesday, November the 26th. So the motion that would be made would be to modify the meeting date for November, Tuesday, the 26th, to go ahead and have the budget meeting on the 12th of December, and then follow that up with the monthly meeting on the 18th of December. Yes.
And we thought we'd start at 10 on the 12th.
Does that work for everyone?
I know that, I think we got a pretty much consensus on December before, because I know Suzanne, you thought you had a.
I gotta move.
But you got it squared away. So really, I mean, as long as we incorporate the November date, if everybody's good with it.
I'll make the motion if those dates work for everyone.
Okay, so we have a first,
Second.
we have a first and a second. So we'll plan on those dates. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same.
Now, so the 12th would be at 10 a.m.
I'll send you all invites too.
You sent out invites today for the, I got
Yeah, I
invites
guess I did move them
to
already.
the November, and December meetings today already.
Was that what that was?
I'm anticipating you have fun for a minute.
I thought they were just for tonight, so I just deleted. Yeah.
Too, but I wouldn't have.
No, no, no,
I'm
no.
gonna be there, he'll see me.
They're for the November and December meetings.
For security test.
So why would-
Yeah, I'm gonna be there, delete.
All right, so we're good for that. What were you gonna ask, Jason? Did you get your question answered?
Oh, well, are we
Talk about,
are we doing anything? Well,
I would, you guys good for lunch?
Yes.
CPs again, is that what we got last year?
well, that'd be December the 12th. then.
Everybody good with
So you want me
that?
to go ahead and tell?
That's 10 a.m.,
I'm sorry?
10 a.m. on the.
Is when we're starting the meeting. And then we'll try to complete that by. time.
I think 10 to noon should be plenty of time to do the budget.
Hopefully it's not that big.
All right, so I think we're good with that. We have some policy reviews. I don't think there's any major changes. Brad, if you want to try to hone in.
So the first one, member access to records, all we changed here was, it gives us the 5 days instead of 3. And then today it says for some reason that we're gonna respond to them in written. But with today's technology, we put electronic, and then on the form, we added or an email address. So it gives us 2 avenues. We can either do a written response or we can do it through email. And then we changed to 3 to 5. That's really the only changes.
I saw where they can take notes. Notes may be taken. Are they allowed to take pictures? I didn't read in here where pictures were prohibited, but in today's technological world, do we want to address that? Do we need to address that? Because it's pretty simple to snap a picture of anything, even though you can't walk out with it. You can walk out with a picture of whatever.
If you really want my opinion, if they can take notes, what's the difference if it's not a picture? I don't mind it unless you guys want to do something different. I mean, if it's something that is confidential and it's just not, right,
You're not
it's
going to
not,
give it to them anyway. right?
we're not gonna give it to them anyway. So honestly, anything that they're gonna see here, I don't really care personally if they do. I think legal's gonna say, shouldn't be showing anything you shouldn't be showing.
So you,
I never
I'll phrase the question because I read it multiple times and
you didn't see it.
I didn't see it. I'm going, today's.
But they're not allowed to take documents.
They're not allowed
Right.
to take.
But I would put that in the same category as taking a picture. If they can't take the document, why should they be able to take a picture of the document and take
If
it
they
out?
can replicate that document. That's a good point.
You're not allowed to walk out with it.
It's just an observation more than anything. I thought, wow.
Maybe just add that to G,
Yeah, we can do that.
photos or notes may not be taken. Notes may be taken, but not.
But no use of phones,
Yeah,
no photographs or no pictures.
And I guess part of it, the only thing is if it was taken covertly
I'm just gonna add it in.
and you don't have it.
Oh, that's just gonna.
Squirrel.
I was thinking about it, a camera.
So everybody's good with that change on G? What do you want to put? No photo, no pictures.
I'm gonna put notes may be taken no photographs.
No flash photography.
Be taken, no,
Your phone's on silent.
no pictures can be taken.
Or copies.
There it says that you can't take the document.
Just say Xerox. No Xeroxes. So, notes can be taken, pictures may be taken. Is that okay?
It's prohibited.
There you go.
Better word.
Like, notes can be taken, photos, photos. Prohibited. All right, on the next, we can do these all together.
Yes.
Establishment of safety policy, there was. So we don't sign copies anymore. We have policy text, which they acknowledge they trained and read and trained, so you don't sign these, we redo it in the system. So that's the change we made. 116, this is yours. I don't think I did anything to this. No,
No changes.
no changes. And then 117, I don't think there's any changes. No, I don't think there. That. All right, so, need a motion.
Make a motion to pass the 4 policies.
Okay, changes associated with it. We go first. Second. Yeah.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same.
All right, in old business, we did discuss, the bylaw red lines last month, and I believe somewhat of a consensus to delay voting on it until this month, but there's been no additional changes other than what we talked about last month. So continue the discussion, or if everybody's good with what we went through. Good. Yeah, the only thing you guys changed last month was in 407 at the very end. We deleted that last line. It was confusing about all other voting matters. So that's the only thing that was changed. And yeah, we did discuss that during the meeting. Yeah, that's okay. All right, so need a motion to approve the bylaw red line changes. So moved first. We have a second. Dale's first. Jason's seconding the motion. All in favor, say aye. Those the same. It's unanimous. All right, Matt, I think you're going to talk to us a little bit more about the long-term. Maybe you go there. I'm gonna let Matt.
We still have $500,000 we can borrow on our US. It was 4.02% today. I think that we have $500,000 there. It'd go a long way towards covering a good portion of that 1.5 million you talked about earlier. I think it could be earmarked towards that. I mean, in general, interest rates have fallen some. I don't know how much farther they're going to fall. I mean, it's cheaper than our current average cost of debt. I mean, it comes back down to the idea of do we borrow against the things that we do, or do we borrow when we need the cash? And realistically, that's you guys' decision. I'm fine with it.
That's a 30-year, 4.02.
Yep, 20 years, 4.02 too.
And this closes out, Jason, the
20 is the last 30. Normally 20 is higher than 30.
Yeah.
RUS.
Yeah.
This is our US.
This will finish out our planned borrowing from our US.
We want to do a 30-year.
I would do the 30 year. It's the same rate as the 20.
How much are we paying over the 30 years for that 500,000? Do you know? Have you done that calculation? I mean, what's the payment at
4.02% times.
I didn't do that, no. I can, you know.
It don't seem feasible to me to go 30 years or 500,000 at 4% interest. If you can take care of that through your short term and get it paid off in like 5.
Do you have an amortization schedule on both of those with the 20 versus 30, the amount of interest?
I can do that, I haven't.
I don't know what, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
trying in my mind kind of, just to,
We can do it on our phone right now.
that's what I'm gonna build up right now. I got it saved as a favorite for
Yeah. It's pretty easy.
his calculator.
Keep going back to buying a new vehicle in 30 years. That's right, so I can get a better rate. That's part.
I mean, the 10-year money was 3.75, so I mean, there's not much savings. Pushing. I guess I come back to the idea that inflation will chew up that difference over the course of the 20 years. To where, I mean, your effective interest rate, if you take your inflation rate off your interest rate, you're effectively borrowing for nothing.
And we know that's what's gonna happen.
Okay, so on 500,000 at 4.02, 228, 442 in interest.
For the.
And on 30 years, it's 361 in interest.
So what's the inflation?
$140,000 difference.
Anybody know what inflation?
Yeah, what it's gonna be.
I mean, even though the rates are same, it's still something to discuss, the difference of.
I was hoping somebody would know that answer.
Didn't know the rate.
We wouldn't be here tonight if we knew that. On 15 years. 250.
We can amortize 500,000 over 30 years with 5% inflation and
Might get another rate cut the next 60 days.
Right, yeah.
So when do they talk again in November?
They're talking the November meeting, which is after the election.
But I don't know. So here's another thing I guess we can talk about. There's no doubt that at the 1.5 that we're talking about, that this is going to be in that plan. Why would we not do that? So I think as one of the options that we're going to give you for the financing plan for the meters, this is going to be included in there. So do we really? That's an option that they're going to have to approve.
Yeah. It's gonna be one
I guess you can make it you can do the motion and approve it here, or you can make.
I mean, you're saying you want the $500,000 because you need the cash, right?
We don't need it today. I mean, we're gonna need it.
But I mean, you had $1.5 million worth of construction plant investment that's, you're telling us we're gonna have to do in the next 4 months. So we're gonna have cash from somewhere.
Yeah, we're gonna need that by the end of the year, yeah.
You've got 370 or 370,000 now.
Yeah, if you look at the, that's cash projections, we got a cash problem by December.
So when we approved this 24 budget, we had, and I should have looked before I came tonight. I didn't. So I'm going to ask you.
We had the $500,000 earmarked to be borrowed in June.
That's,
And it was,
that was it for the year. We did plan on this $500,000.
yes, but we put that in there because we knew we needed,
And we all agreed to that at the time.
We did.
yeah,
This is our US money, so.
yes, this is the
What is
last of the argument.
CFC's rate right now?
Gonna be higher.
It was.
Should be a point higher. Probably. This is a work plan.
Yes. It's the cheapest money we can, exactly.
Yeah.
This is the cheapest money we can borrow, yes.
It's down.
Unless,
The next couple of weeks.
But we've only got the
If others could go down, to, it would all go down. This is trading rate.
we got to pay off the money.
Use it.
I mean,
In the ground.
Yeah, it doesn't have any money.
yeah, it's still gonna need money, because
This is just getting that money.
if we do this, we have no $500,000 of cash.
Say that again?
If we convert this from the short term to the long term, we don't have any influx of cash.
I didn't hear what
You're just paying off that short term, right? With this
All
five
we're doing
hundred.
is shifting the rate. We're just shifting it from short term to
We
long term.
paid back the short term this past month. That's the same note that was in there last month.
This is the same memo as last one. Apologize.
So right now in short term, how much do we have?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's,
This isn't paying off the short term.
We probably
Okay.
will have more short-term to do this year,
Yeah,
but I don't know what to tell you that number.
it would be, yes.
But he's also got 1.5 million
We've got stuff coming down the pipe, so it's got to be paid.
next 4 months too.
And remember, the other thing to caveat here is, so when you do a construction work plan project, you say, hey, I want to borrow $2 million on this $10 million project, right? And they don't give you the money. So you go build it. And then once you build it, you go get it certified that you build it to their plans. Then they give you money. That's all this is taking the money that we said we wanted to build what we already built. It's not, this isn't new money to go buy something that we want to go buy. This
It's
is,
something we've already got in.
we've already had the.
Already in the ground.
Created the answer.
Real asset.
this is just really a reimbursement for what we said we wanted to do in the plan. That's all it is. It's going to be the same way in fiber, right? But it's hard to say how much of this are you going to need to convert short term to long term over the course of the rest of the year, because I'm going to tell you, well, what's the weather going to do, and I'll let you know.
We're thinking.
I mean, we did already approve this technically in the budget. This was part of the plan.
Right. Is there, let's assume we went forward with it. Is there an agreement that we go 30 versus the 20 then, or is that holding anybody? back?
I would, the, what this is paying for.
Is for the plan, which is probably 30.
It's a long-term asset.
You try to match your assets with your.
We also have to keep in mind, though, that we have a lot of 30-year assets that we paid for out of current cash.
Absolutely.
Right, this is a fraction of what we spent this year.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't moving the equity needle.
I think I could probably make a pretty valid argument. We have always paid for short-term assets on cash. Long-term assets is the only thing we have ever for since I've been here.
Does it make any sense? Matt, I know, I don't know that you mentioned it, just to break it up, 250 versus 500. I think you had it in your memo, but is there any?
I don't know, my crystal ball isn't working like it used to.
Hey, Matt, what was this 30-year rate a month ago at our meeting?
5.
We saved 0.25%. What's the math on that on 30 years?
You could.
Come on.
If we made it up,
I mean, anything, how much it's gonna be.
if we waited
Right,
up.
that's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's what well, if we did
That's why I asked the
50 right now, in 30 years, it's 180. On 20 years, it's 114,000. I would propose do 250 now and then revisit it. Because from experts,
Okay, and so your motion is to go with,
oh, I'm just making, yeah. I would suggest, what if we did 250 and then revisit it amongst the future interest?
Let's keep that conversation open. I'm willing to make that motion. Is everybody supportive of that?
Then I'll second
430 years, I mean, right?
250 for how long?
30.
I'll second that motion.
$19,000, by the way.
and so
And marketing for the cyber project, there we go.
maybe Matt will have good news next month or the following month.
Matt, was there a time frame of this short,
And revisit it again.
last credit at some point you had to pay that off, or did you not have?
We paid a line of credit since that was our highest cost stuff. We paid that already.
Yeah, that's
Prepaid Hoosier.
That's some changes in complexion for me.
So
All right, we do have a motion on the table, 250 at 30 years.
With the additional to be revisited. I mean, if I was to make that as a part of the motion.
And Suzanne seconded.
They drop and Matt wants to send us all an email.
Okay. All right, we have a first and a second. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the same. All right. Affiliated organizations. Brian, you got anything from hometown? Jason, you got anything from Hoosier?
No meeting.
Anything coming up?
It's on the Palisades.
When are you
October
going?
7th. We're going to St. Joe's for the gas plant on the 7th, and for the Palisades, the nuclear plant on the 8th. Both of me. I told him I'm just about the bus.
And from the IEC, we don't have a board meeting until the 16th. I do have a budget meeting next week, so nothing new to report as of now. And how about any director training? Did anybody attend anything or conferences this last time? One? All right, I'll take a motion to close the meeting. We'll be headed into executive session.
I'll make a motion.
Go first. We're adjourned. Good. Take a quick couple minutes. I don't think we'll be in.
Crystal, you're not going to the Women in Energy this year.